voted, a Democrat would win every single election, not even close. It's a matter of getting them to the polls. So how many know the West Wing here? Nobody doesn't. So
You were on a few years.
how many know Saved by the Bell? I was already also on that. Hopefully you don't remember that character. But I talk about the West Wing because I've always been fascinated as to why people are so attracted or love these characters so much. And part of what I realize is that they're deeply flawed, right? Sam Seaborn slept with a hooker. President
On accident.
I'm not so sure. I don't know if you know the actual guy, but no.
Deeply flawed.
Or it imitates life. But the president, lied about his MS, or at least kept it a secret, and a horrible storyline that should never have been written. Toby was sorry to spoil it for those in the third season, but
I'll step out.
Come on, really? He's already been after us today about the spoiler alerts. He's like, no, we want to know.
But the thing I think that people loved so much, despite these flaws, and they were deeply flawed, emotionally flawed, personally flawed, in their personal life and so on, was that they clearly had their hearts and minds in the right place and wanted to leave the world in a better place than when they came into office, the way they found it. Clearly, there's only one candidate who remotely resembles those kind of qualities, and that's Hillary Clinton. The other guy, Colin Powell, who was called the last reasonable man by Newsweek, said this of Trump. Trump is a national disgrace and an international pariah. He wrote of General Michael Flynn, who was Trump's chief military advisor. General Michael Flynn is a hard right-wing nutty who abused the staff at the Defense Intelligence Agency and was relieved of his duties because of it.
Oh my God.
And when I think of, and I talk to the young people about it, I've seen The West Wing, that episode called Proportional Response. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
My favorite episode, even though I was barely in it. It's very unusual for an actor to love an episode. But I loved it specifically because, where'd you guys come from? Come on in if you like. You're okay there? Okay. I love that. You have to wrecking your office. I love that episode because it showed the President of the United States in a personal, kind of private mode. We, in the public, only see the President when he delivers his decision or his speech to the public in my lifetime. I never saw behind the walls, you know what I mean? In that episode, the president's personal doctor was shot down in a terrorist attack over Syria. And remember President Bartlett's response. He was viscerally angry, emotional. His response was he wanted to nuke Syria, if you recall. He had Leo McGarry, beautifully played by John Spencer, the Joint Chiefs, other advisors who were trustworthy, who talked him down, calmed him down, and convinced him that he had to come to the right decision, which was a proportional, rational response. And all I can do is imagine what a Donald Trump, his chief military advisor, is crazier than he is. Trump will start a war over Twitter, and the guy who is more crazy than him. Imagine a similar scenario. Imagine the Cuban Missile crisis. It is unthinkable.
Well, the guy who was already said, why would we take nukes off the table?
Yeah. Well, then Japan should have it.
Japan and
Saudi Arabia should have it.
Yeah.
North Korea.
New Jersey should have it. But one of the things I talk about is the what's that?
Or we should nuke New Jersey.
Because there are people who want to. The 2000 election, this election reminds me a little bit of that, and it's something to talk about, especially to young people, because they don't remember it. We forget how time goes so quickly. They were 2 years old, some of them who are eligible to vote now when that election happened. To me, that election was was a fork in the road of history.
Mhm.
And and it reminds me of that election because Gore wasn't the most exciting candidate, right? He reminded us of the chemistry professor that put us to sleep in college. And they were coming out of a somewhat difficult situation with the scandal, you know, in the White House. And people were kind of disaffected, even though we came out of a period of peace and prosperity relative, right? Growth in the economy and all that stuff, reduction of the debt. But people weren't excited, or they got apathetic. And a lot of them voted for Ralph Nader. And Gore wasn't allowed to accept his win over a recount that ended in 537 votes. 2% of the vote in Florida went to Ralph Nader. I will never tell someone not to vote their true conscience, but I do tell them take responsibility, because those people that voted for Ralph Nader in Florida have on their heads, I'm sorry to say it, hundreds of thousands of innocent deaths in Iraq, and the deaths of, and the injuries to thousands of American soldiers. The invasion of Iraq does not happen if Al Gore is president. We do not take the economy off the cliff to the edge of destruction with Al Gore as president. Not only that, but he brings an economic boon in research and development and money to create the alternative energy economy, which would have created hundreds of thousands of jobs, would have given us a leadership in that field, which we would be reaping the benefits of in many ways, not only economically, but obviously we need to save the earth. So that's why this election, to me, it's so important to talk to millennials, especially those that are considering not voting at all or voting protest, to remind them of history. This is another fork. We have a chance to get back on the main highway, or we have a chance to be taken deep into the backwoods. And I can't even think about consequences of a Trump presidency. It's not in our minds to even imagine what kind of a disaster that would be. Another thing I remind them of, because young people are so anxious for change to come immediately, because that's the way I was when I was young. And I was out on the streets demonstrating, you know, at your age, against the war in Vietnam, amongst other things, civil rights and women's issues and all those things. And I have to remind myself and also young people that Rosa Parks sat on a bus a year before I was born. When I was alive, there were still people, when I was born, there were still people alive who had been slaves in this country. Betty Friedan, Steinem, Bella Abzug spearheaded women's liberation movement when I was 11 years old. The Stonewall Rebellion of 1969 in Greenwich Village, which began the gay and lesbian movement. 1969, I was 13, 14 years old. Look at how much progress and look at how much change that we've been able to create, working on the streets, but also working inside out. If we don't elect the LBJs, the Kennedys, the LBJs, I know LBJ's got another side of the coin, but domestically, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Bill, and Carter, and then Clinton, and then of course Obama. This change is tough to come by. I think this election and the phenomenon of, I hate to use that word, of the Trump business is to me, it's the last resistance of the old world. It's the wrestler who's about to be pinned. The wrestler is about to be pinned, who at that point is their strongest. You know, the resistance to defeat. To me, this country has an opportunity to be such a hopeful and beautiful place within the next 20 years. It all has to do with this election. I'll give you one story, another one about the West Wing, which I find very funny. there was an episode where Toby saved Social Security. Do you guys remember that?
Mhm.
Says what?
Social
Security.
Oh,
Security.
yeah.
And it was shown that the real world didn't pick up on it. And I was given the script and I read it through and through and couldn't make heads or tails out of how this makes sense. And we had consultants like Lawrence O'Donnell, who you see on MSNBC, and Dee Dee Myers, who was former press secretary to Clinton, Peggy Noonan, who was a Republican, Pat Caddell, who was a Carter pollster, and I went to everyone and said, please explain this to me, and no one could. You know, they all came up with different math, with different scenarios as to how this would work. No one could really explain it to me. So I did it like I was doing it in a foreign language, and I just did the episode phonetically, just to get through it, because I didn't understand it. So then it aired, and I came to work, and in my trailer was a letter, and in the letter it said, "Thank you so much for attempting to tackle this very complex issue. Here are 10 reasons why your plan won't work." And delineated down with the 10 reasons. Signed, Senator from New York, Hillary Rodham.
You kept it, right?
And I hope I kept it. I hope it's in a box somewhere. And that's my first introduction to how brilliant this woman is, and how thorough she is, and how completely she understands the issues, and how touching it was that she wrote me a personal letter. Another line from The West Wing: "Make this election about smart and not." Remember that discussion with Bartlett? Make this election about engaged and not. Make this about qualified, not. And I add a little line to it: make this election about evil and not.
Yes.
There's only one candidate who is positioned, who is prepared, who has any interest in making this world a better place than when she found it, and that is Hillary Rodham Clinton. There's something I want to read. You guys know Justice David Souter, who retired 5 years ago. He was interviewed about where we are in this country. He wrote something fascinating. Has anyone seen this? It's fascinating. He wrote, and he spoke about this. He said, "I don't worry about our losing Republican government in the United States because I'm afraid of a foreign invasion. I don't worry about it because I think there's going to be a coup by the military, as has happened in some other places. What I worry about is that when problems are not addressed, people will not know who is responsible. And when the problems get bad enough, as they might do, for example, with another serious terrorist attack, as they might do with another financial meltdown, some one person will come forward and say, 'Give me total power, and I will solve this problem.' This is how the Roman Republic fell. Augustus became emperor not because he arrested the Roman Senate. He became emperor because he promised that he alone would solve problems that were not being solved. That is the way democracy dies. And if something is not done to improve the level of civic knowledge, that is what you should worry about at night." This election is about saving our democracy because this man says that he's the only one that can fix. I mean, imagine.
Scary.
Fix everything.
Imagine the cojones it takes to say it's unconscionable. The fact that he won't accept the election results. You guys know all this. And we have to impart on young people and anyone who for some reason is still undecided that this is a fork in the road of history. And if we don't take the right one, we're going to be paying for it for decades, if not lifetime. So I just got to tell you how moved I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do this every fucking meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just, no, seriously, all of us that come and go around the country and talk to you people, this is where we save our democracy. This is, you're the people that were going to do that. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.